here on NFL Fantasy Live, and Michael F. Florio is back in the hottest seat in all of fantasy football, where folks are ready to jump in his mentions and be like, you said to start this guy, and it was bad, and that's your fault. He's willing to take that heat, and now he's going to give you a quarterback that you have to start. Well, just the quarterback you should start.
Yeah, you absolutely have. But Caleb Williams, Rank would agree. He is in a great place for fantasy success this week. I think this is a lot like with Justin Fields last week, where you have to look past the down recent performances and focus in on the matchup. The Bengals have allowed the third most passing yards, second most touchdowns in the last month. They are bottom 4 in pressure created since week 4, and they have allowed a top 12 fantasy quarterback in 5 of the last 6 games. So I don't care what Caleb has done fantasy-wise in the last couple of weeks. I care what he's going to do this week, and the matchup is far too good to get away from. And then Dak Prescott. I know he's coming off of a down week, but he's not going to be facing the Denver Broncos again. He's going to get the Arizona Cardinals. And right now, Dak is top 3 in pass attempts, yards, and touchdowns. And the Cardinals might not look like the best matchup on paper, but they pick up sacks at the 5th lowest rate, and they struggle to create pressure. So I think if you give Dak time with the weapons that he has around him, he will be a top 8 quarterback for the 6th time in his last 8 games.
Yeah, no better evidence that the matchup is important in your quarterback starts than Dak last week against the Denver Broncos. Is it a similar thing for who's sitting this week?
Yes, it is. We were just talking about Bo Nix in the bump last segment. He's a sit for me this week, unfortunately, and it has everything to do with the matchup. The Texans have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. They've allowed the 5th fewest yards, fewest touchdowns, the lowest passer rating, and EPA. What does that all mean? It is very difficult to throw on this team, and that is why no quarterback in fantasy has finished top 12 against them. In fact, none have reached 20 fantasy points, and only 2 this year have topped 14. So with it being a good streaming week, or you could elevate someone like Caleb or Kyler Murray, who maybe you haven't started the last couple of weeks, I would try to get away from Bo Nix in this one.
All right, the rough matchup rears its head as Mac Jones had all kinds of problems with Will Anderson and that Texans defense last week. Let's go to the tight ends. Who are we starting?
A couple weeks ago, I was like, I'm not the Kyle Pitts guy, I promise. 3rd week in a row, I am saying to start Kyle Pitts Sr. We are back. In each of the last 2 weeks, he's top 13 fantasy points. Let's see if we can make it a three-peat. He is getting more consistent usage here. And what I like, he's not getting as targeted downfield. That's typically what I look for in players. But this is allowing Kyle Pitts to use his catch-and-run capabilities, and it has translated to fantasy success. Plus, the Patriots are top 5 in yards and fantasy points allowed to tight ends. In a game where the Falcons could be chasing points, I think you start Kyle Pitts. And then this is all about the matchup, but Mark Andrews, because for one, Lamar is back. And Andrews is Lamar's boy, and when Lamar plays, obviously the Ravens score a whole lot more points. Plus, Dolphins have allowed the 6th most yards and 11th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. And given the defenses that are on each side, this game has a chance to be a score fest, which just raises the chances that Mark Andrews could catch a touchdown. And when you're talking about elevating tight ends from your bench, you probably want them to score a touchdown.
Yeah, it helps when the tight ends score. Which tight end is not scoring, because you're going to have them on the bench this week.
Don't call me a homer. I am saying to sit Dalton Kincaid in this matchup against the Chiefs. He has played the Chiefs 3 times in his career. He has never topped 50 yards. He has never scored a touchdown, and he has never reached double digit in fantasy points. Plus, just this season alone, the Chiefs are bottom 5 in yards and fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends. They've allowed just 1 touchdown. I know this game maybe has a lot of points, and that scares me a little bit, but the matchup in the past history of no success points me to get away from Dalton Kincaid.
Right. If your team is on the fritz, just listen for a bit, because Michael F. Florio has your starts and sits. Go to NFL.com/start-sit if you want to see the full list. We're going to give you a little bit of a preview here on our show right now. We're going to start with the running back position, who is in our lineup.
He's going to be on the insiders after this, and it's an honor to sit next to one Troy legend and tell you to start another Troy legend in Kamani Vidal, who you see there, 19 or more in 2 of his last 3. Last week, he turned 25 opportunities into nearly 130 yards, 20 fantasy points, and a top 10 running back finish. Plus, it's a fantastic matchup. The Titans have allowed the 2nd most rush yards, most rushing touchdowns by far, and the 3rd most fantasy points per game to running backs. And Patrick, my hot take this week, the Chargers might have a lead in this game. So game scripts could be on the other Troy Legends side. And then You heard Rank talking about the Vikings run defense. I agree. In fact, it's not that they're bad on a per carry basis. It's that teams just continue to run the ball because they have leads against the Vikings so often. And over time, it wears this defense down. And that is what I expect this week for the Lions. So with the lead, with game script probably being on their side, and with the Vikings defense in recent weeks struggling against the run, I think this is a week for David Montgomery to bounce back. After the last month's been pretty rough for him fantasy-wise.
Hey, between me and Adam Rank, going with Kamani Battel and David Montgomery, those are pretty good choices in our opinion. But who's going on the bench this week?
J.K. Dobbins. This one pains me to say because I have Dobbins in a lot of leagues, but he's averaged just around 15 touches per game, and he's very little used in the passing game. So that makes him more big play or touchdown reliant. The issue is, I don't know if you can count on that this week because in the last 2 weeks, him and R.J. Harvey have split red zone and end zone looks down the middle. Plus, the Texans are bottom 6 in explosive runs and yards just in general allowed to the running back position. So because of the tough matchup and because game script could be against them in this one potentially, I think it's okay if you have another option to get away from J.K. Dobbins.
That was so close to those touchdowns against the Cowboys. It's wild that how it didn't happen. Let's go to the wide receivers. Who's in our lineup?
This one's fun.
Oh.
He was my offensive and defensive rookie of the year pick. I know that's probably not going to play out, but Travis Hunter is starting to break out before our eyes. The last we saw of him, he went for over 100 yards, a touchdown, and a 24 fantasy points against the Rams. Now he gets a really good matchup against the Raiders, who've allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game. 2 wide receivers. They really struggle against out wide receivers, and Hunter runs 35% of his routes out wide. There's rumors that they could transition to kind of make him the focal point of the passing attack. But either way, because of the matchup, I think both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are starts this week. And then I'm playing Wan'Dale Robinson in a number of leagues myself because I'm trusting the matchup. The 49ers have allowed the most yards and touchdowns to slot receivers. They allow the highest passer rating and EPA on targets to the slot, and Robinson runs about 60% of his routes from the slot. Plus, the 49ers really struggle to get after quarterbacks, so I expect Dart to have a lot of success as a passer in this one. That translates to fantasy success for Wan'Dale Robinson.
So that means we got to get somebody on the bench. Which wide receiver are we benching?
People are going to call me a homer, I think, in this one.
All right.
I'm benching Bills legend Stefon Diggs.
Homer.
Former Bill Stefon Diggs. Because his one great game this year came clearly powered by hate against the Bills. But since then, he is averaging just 5 targets per game. He has topped 70 yards twice this year. The game leading up to the Bills and the Bills game. The Patriots right now are spreading the ball and production around at such a high rate. It means great things for Drake May and for the Patriots as a team. It hasn't meant great things for their fantasy managers and the players there. Plus, the Falcons have allowed the fewest yards and 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So, tough matchup on top of it.
Time for higher or lower because you get projections on NFL.com. We will tell you whether or not the actual score will be higher or lower than the projected. And we start with one Lamar Demetrius Jackson playing 31 minutes from his hometown. Higher or lower, Mike, than 23.5 points.
I'm not going to doubt Lamar. I'm saying higher here. Not only, like you said, is it a homecoming for him, it is a fantastic matchup for him as well in fantasy. And you see there, in all 3 full games he's played, he has cleared this number and then some with 26 or more fantasy points. And the Dolphins are not only a great matchup, but they have struggled against running quarterbacks this year. They've allowed the most rushing touchdowns to the position. And with the Ravens back against the wall, literally with just 2 wins so far this season, I don't think they're going to take their foot off the gas. I expect Lamar to be out there all game putting up numbers. So, yeah, you know to start him, but I think he goes off.
We'll see if the Dolphins come back with that great defense that they had last week in Atlanta. Rank, it's Sam Clemente Darnold, 17.5 points against the Commanders, higher or lower?
We're going way higher for this one. Don't be besmirching my guy, Sam Darnold, who's had at least 20 fantasy points in 2 out of his last 3 games. Obviously, I love the matchup as well. Washington has allowed 19 points to a quarterback in 3 consecutive games. We saw what Patrick Mahomes did to them during the second half on Monday Night Football. Well, at least I did. I was watching the football game, not calling out anybody else, but I was watching it. The Commanders have allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. I think this is a great opportunity, and it just goes to show, coming into this year, there were questions about Sam. whether he was just a byproduct of a great coaching staff in Minnesota. But he's shown that he's got a lot of ability, can go out there and make a lot of big plays. Him and Jackson Smith and Jigba have made a great tandem. And let this be a lesson to all quarterbacks out there. When in doubt, throw it to your best player. Because we saw Sam do it with Justin Jefferson. Now he's doing it with JSN, and we love him for it.
Yes, it's a tried and true method that turns out to be exceedingly effective. Let's go to Jaylen Warren, the Pittsburgh Steelers running back, against the Indianapolis Colts. Higher or lower, Mark, than 14.6.
Yeah, Pittsburgh didn't win the battle of their quarterback's revenge game last week, but they did get new Mac Miller music, so I know Pittsburgh and Rank is very happy about that. I think Warren goes off this week, though, or at least puts up 15 or more fantasy points, because he has dominated volume this year, averaging 17 touches per game, but in recent weeks, it's been even more than that. The Colts look like a tough run defense on paper, but metrically, they haven't been the best against stopping the run. It's just that they're always leading in games, so it's hard for teams to consistently run the ball against them. But they have allowed the fourth most targets to running backs, and we know Jaylen Warren can be heavily utilized in the passing game as well. So even if he doesn't put up a huge game on the ground, I think he could get enough catches to reach this.
All right, so higher again, 14.6 up. Let's go to another running back who is having a much better season than he was a few weeks ago. Chase Brown, ranked higher or lower than 12.9 against your Bears?
You know, I'm going to say it's going to go higher. I really do believe that the Bears are missing Kyler Gordon. Now, they did sign Gardner Johnson on Wednesday, so hopefully that helps a little bit, because the slot corner actually is a big part of the run defense in Dennis Allen's defense. So hopefully that'll help ease that a little bit. But we've seen great stuff out of Chase Brown over the last couple of games. Ever since Joe Flacco took over as quarterback of the team, he's had at least 100 scrimmage yards in back-to-back games. And again, the Bears have given up some production to the running backs. Last week it was Derrick Henry. And I could see Chase Brown going out there and easily eclipsing that 13-point threshold.
All right, another great start for a running back that folks stuck with. People are trying to stick with Nico Collins right now, Mike. Glad to have him back. Higher lower than 16.2 against the Broncos.
Look, I'm an optimistic person, and I love fantasy points. That's why I almost always go over. But this week, I'm going to say lower here. And I hope I'm wrong, because I have Nico Collins on a couple of fantasy teams, and I could use a big Nico day. But the Broncos have allowed the second fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, just 2 touchdowns. And they create pressure at the highest rate in the NFL. And we know C.J. Stroud struggles when he is under pressure. So whether or not Patrick Surtain plays this week obviously impacts Nico Collins. But either way, I'm not expecting a huge day. But, hey, maybe he catches a long one and I'm wrong.
Yeah, such a surprise to see how well the Texans offense played against the 49ers. Perhaps that comes back and we're wrong. We would like Mike to be wrong, which is something we don't say a lot here on this show. Let's get to Jalen Waddle, who had that touchdown, played pretty well against the Falcons. What does he do higher or lower rank? 14.3 against Baltimore tomorrow night.
That's a pretty heavy projection. I'm still going to go higher.
Oh.
I'm still going to go higher. No, the Ravens defense did get a lot of pieces back on Sunday, so it's hard to really look at the season-long numbers. Now, they've allowed the third most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this season, the second most fantasy points per game to the position. But again, they're getting healthier, and as long as they're allowed to do the helmet-to-helmet contact and not get called for it, it's going to be very tough. No, I'm just saying, apparently it's not a penalty when the Ravens do it. But what I am saying is that I do believe that you can throw the ball in the air against them. Caleb, despite what the national narrative is, Caleb did not have a terrible game. You would be shocked to go out and look like how productive he was moving the ball through the air. He did not get the touchdown. However, I think that Tua Tagovailoa can do that, and I'm going to say higher for Jalen Waddle in this one.
Yeah, a lot of hires and just a couple lowers here, and higher or lower as